I spent 35 years studying what I call character words, and discipline was at the top. I didn't study it casually, it was my actual job. It's what I did professionally for 35 years as a martial arts instructor. I used martial arts as a tool, not just to teach kicks and punches, but to study how discipline actually develops in a person over time. And here's what made my situation different. My students could quit anytime they wanted. Every single class was a choice. That forced me to understand discipline at a level you can't reach by just reading books about it or watching videos. Most people have never had to go that deep, and that's exactly why it keeps failing for them. And it's not because they're weak, it's because they've been trying to run someone else's discipline on a life that was never designed for someone else's discipline. Real self-discipline is an authority that you develop inside yourself through a specific progression. That progression has 7 stages, and I know what each one of them looks like. I know what it feels like from the inside, and I know what it takes to move from one step to the next step. And I'm going to show you all of it, and I'm going to explain how it works. So let's go. Before the 7 stages, you need the right definition, because if you're working from the wrong definition, every stage is going to feel like it's fighting you. Most people define discipline as forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. And that definition makes discipline feel like punishment by design. No wonder it feels like a grind. No wonder people quit. They're quitting because the definition they're working from makes the experience miserable before they even start. Here's what discipline actually is. Discipline it's a process, but it's what happens after you get curious about something you want and start going through the process of learning, testing, exploring, and experimenting with what works and what doesn't for you, and specifically you. You can use what gurus say as things to try. You can talk to people that you consider disciplined and get ideas from them too, but you're still going to have to find what works for you. And here's why. Your life is unique to you. Your circumstances are unique to you. The way you think, the way you process information, your frames of reference, your body, everything about how you operate is specific to you, which means no one else's system is ever going to fit you perfectly, because cookie cutter systems were designed for someone whose internal wiring is completely different than yours. Real discipline has to be a process of discovery. Discovery about how you operate and what your choices produce in your world. Discovery of what works for your specific body, your mind, and your specific circumstances. And here's what that process actually produces at the neurological level: links, memories, emotional states. Every time you run an experiment, every time you test a strategy against reality, you observe what happens. Your brain builds a connection between the effort you give and the progress you make. That link is what discipline actually is at the level of your brain. It won't stick if it comes from the outside. It has to be built from the inside, through your own experiments in your own reality, producing your own results. And I want to be clear, I am going to walk you through the stages of discipline. I'm going to tell you how it works mechanically, how I established it in thousands of students over my 35-year career. But you have to understand before we go any further that you are going to have to find your way of doing things. That's kind of the purpose of discipline. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I need to explain one more super important concept related to discipline, because without it, discipline is a grind. A kid walked into my school once after getting yelled at by his mom. I was listening from inside the room. The last thing she said was, "You need to be more respectful. I am tired of having this conversation with you." Then she just left me to deal with that. Now, he was supposed to walk into a room where people are trying to punch him and kick him in the face in that emotional state. Now, I could have asked him, "What's wrong?" But by asking him that, what I'm really doing is asking him to relive what he just went through, which would have reinforced the exact emotional state that I needed to shift him away from. So I didn't do that. Instead, I sang it to him like a 4-year-old. I go, "Ha ha, you got in trouble." And he smiled. I knew I had him. I was breaking the emotional state he just experienced. But then I went further. I warmed up the class with running and jumping and kicking a pad. Kids love that. It's fun. They have to focus. And kicking a pad is a great place to dump some frustration. By the time the real teaching started, the experience with his mom was out of his head. At least until he walked back out of my room. This is what I mean by emotional state. State is the internal condition that you bring to any activity before you start, and it determines more than most people realize. Here's what nobody in the discipline conversation is saying. The grind isn't the activity you're doing. The grind is in the state a person brings to the activity. You can have the same workout, same financial task, same creative work, completely different experience depending on the state you bring to it. Most people's experience of discipline is actually a relationship with one specific negative state they had the first time they did a thing. They were already tired. The experience felt like punishment, so the brain logged it that way. And every subsequent attempt carries that memory into that situation. That's not a discipline problem, that's a state problem that's been mislabeled as a discipline problem. And the target state can't be motivation or excitement because those states never last. The target state needs to be curiosity. Because curiosity doesn't require you to feel good, it only requires one thing, a question that you want answered. Am I capable of doing this thing? What am I going to learn about myself by doing this thing? A person in a curious state doesn't experience the activity as a grind, they experience as an experiment that they're interested in running. And the cool thing about state is that when the state is wrong, you can shift it. Now, I'm not going to lie, it does take some practice, but if you aren't in the right state of mind before you try something, you won't be open to learning about the thing. And your brain is going to link a negative emotion to it. Here's how it works. You have to use your body. You got to move a little bit. The body leads the brain more reliably than the brain leads itself, especially when you're trying to change your state. Here's some things that I do. One thing is I take a deep breath and a sharp exhale like this, and I change my posture. I sit up straight or I stand up straight. I change my facial expression. I like to smile. Just a smile is enough for your brain to adjust your state. And one method is rarely enough. You got to combine two or three. The shift happens faster when you give your body multiple signals. That means give it different movements. Everything that follows in this process works better in a curious state, and everything that follows is harder in a negative one. So check your state first. Shift it if you need to, then try the thing or start the thing. Stage one is tell yourself. Now, when students came into my school, I talked to every single one of them. I called them by name. I touched them somehow. I'd give them a high five or punch them in the arm, or I'd throw a pretend kick that they had to block. And I'd ask them what they learned today. That wasn't just small talk. That was research. I was researching their state. I was figuring out what each person needed before I decided what we were going to do in class. Then I'd look at the stripes that the group had and identify what was needed the most. And before we did a single thing, I'd tell them exactly what we're going to accomplish in the class. I'd say something like, today we're going to find out who's going to earn the blue stripe. There are 10 of you in class. That means that 6 of you must earn a stripe if you want to play a game at the end of class. I'd give them a crystal clear objective. Normally it'd be a specific stripe, which meant a specific category of training. Each number of people that needed to earn it, and a reward that I stated all up front. And all that was done before any work started. Being very specific about what we're gonna do produced a completely different response than any vague directive could. That's what the first stage of developing discipline is. I call it tell yourself. Every new discipline begins the same way. The first thing you do is you gather information. You research, you watch, you find someone who has already done the thing that you want to do, and you absorb what they know. That information is not the discipline. It's just the raw material. It's the ingredients you're going to eventually use. But you can't stay there. After you've gathered enough information, you use it to tell yourself what you want, and you got to be specific. Don't say things like fitness or financial freedom. Those things are not specific. Make it one specific, nameable thing that you will know without any doubt whether you did it or not. Instead of get fit, what if you said, I'll walk around my block every morning for the next 30 days? Reality can respond to that. The every morning walk is either a yes or a no. The result is observable. The honesty is unavoidable. Now, I'll tell you, most people resist this level of specificity for one reason. Being vague protects the ego. If I say I want to get fit and I don't get fit, the want was vague enough that I can tell myself, I'm working on it, I can do it Monday. But if I say I'll walk around the block every day for 30 days, there's nowhere to hide. And the discomfort you get when you're specific and then don't do the thing is perfect. It's supposed to feel that way. That discomfort is the beginning of honesty. And one more thing, the thing you want has to be genuinely yours, not what your doctor said or your spouse wants, what you actually want. Because you can't get curious about something if you don't actually care about it. And without curiosity, you're back to the grind. One more part of the stage is tell yourself what you're willing to give up. What you're willing to give up to get the thing you want. Your 24 hours is already full producing the results you're already getting. So something's got to go. TV, screen time, happy hour, something. The willingness to give up something is the proof to yourself that the want is real. Anyone can say they want something. The sacrifice separates the genuine want from just saying it. So, to recap, stage one is tell yourself. And it's where you do research so that you'll be able to decide what you want, and then you sacrifice one thing to make room for a better thing. After you do that thinking, then you're ready to move to stage two. Stage two is show yourself. I have 30 years of knowledge and experience level content for this channel. Zero ability to deliver it on camera. When I started this YouTube channel, the lighting was wrong, the audio was unusable. I couldn't speak 3 sentences on camera without freezing up. I had to learn scripts, then I needed a teleprompter, then I just sounded like I was reading from a teleprompter. 30 years of teaching in a room full of people, and I could not string 3 sentences together on film. Every single problem produced the next experiment. I had to experiment with lighting and fix the lighting, and experiment with the audio and solve the audio. The scripts were flat, so I had to write speeches. The teleprompter felt robotic, so I learned to perform through it. I didn't call any of those problems failure. I don't really believe in failure. I call each issue a data point. That shift isn't semantics. It's the difference between someone who stops and someone who keeps going. The person who calls it failure normally quits. The person who calls it a data point runs the next experiments with the new information figured in. In the area of YouTube, I was a white belt, and white belt is exactly where you have to be willing to start. Not just in the martial arts, in anything you're building a discipline around. Here's why this matters neurologically. Your brain does not yet have a neurological link between this activity and progress. There's no wiring that says when I do this, something good happens. Without that link, effort feels pointless. Your brain is going to resist, it's going to want to quit. That doesn't mean that you have a character flaw, that's just a wiring problem. And the solution isn't to push harder, the solution is to install the first link. The way you install that link is by setting an objective that's almost impossible to fail at. It doesn't have to be an impressive thing or a super ambitious thing. It just has to be a win. The result is irrelevant. The point is the link you're building. You're teaching your brain that doing this thing produces progress. Now here's where most people get stuck. They think if the objective is easy, it doesn't count. They think discipline requires suffering. That is wrong-headed. If you said you're going to walk around the block and then you did it, that link gets installed. If you said you would write for 10 minutes a day and you did it, that wiring gets stronger. One builds the capacity for the next one. Then you extend it. You go a little further, a little longer, a little harder. I used to say harder, faster, meaner in class. And when you hit the objective, you reward yourself immediately, as in right now, because the reward isn't a crutch. The reward is a neurological setup. You're wiring or linking pleasure to progress. You're teaching your brain that effort leads to something good. You figured out what your own discipline actually looks like in stage one. Now you get to test it and show yourself at the smallest possible scale. You're not proving your discipline yet. You're proving to your brain that this activity leads somewhere. That is stage two. Show yourself. Now, stage three is help yourself. There were days in my 35 years of training where everything hurt. Not just one thing, everything hurt. On those days, I had a choice. I could skip working out or I could find another way in. Now, I never asked myself if I felt like training. That decision was already made. That question has only one honest answer when everything hurts. So I asked a different question. What is not sore? Whatever the answer was became the workout for the day. That question did two things simultaneously. It shifted my state from resistance to curiosity about what the answer is, and it gave me immediate direction that required no additional decision making. I wasn't deciding whether or not to train, I was figuring out what to train. The structure removed the decision about whether or not I was going to train. The question removed the resistance to doing it. What remained was just doing the work. That's what stage 3 looks like in real life. This is the stage where the hardest days show up. You know what you want, you have real data from the experiments that you've been running, and now the day arrives where you don't want to move. You don't want to be consistent. This is where most people lose what they built. The shift that makes the difference is small. You're no longer deciding whether you're going to follow through, you're deciding how you're going to adapt. And underneath that shift is structure, non-negotiable structure. When you have no structure, you have to make a fresh decision every single time about whether to do the thing. That decision-making moment is where the negative state has the most power. The brain is asked to choose between comfort and discomfort with no predetermined answer. It's almost always going to choose comfort. But when structure is in place, when the routine is non-negotiable, the decision's already been made. The only remaining question is what state to bring to it. You're no longer deciding whether to do the thing, you're deciding how to show up for the thing you already decided to do. Structure removes the battle. State determines the quality of what remains. Now, the tool you already have is a question. It's not, do I feel like doing this today? That is a dumb question. What about, what will I learn about myself if I show up and do it anyway? Or how can I adapt my focus to study a different aspect of this thing? Or what part of this have I not fully explored yet? The question redirects attention from the obstacle to the experiment. That redirection is the state shift. Here's a trick I use. Clothes. I have watched this for 35 years. Every student walks in the door in street clothes. They're still carrying whatever happened in their day before they arrived. 5 minutes later, they're in uniform and something has already shifted. The uniform is not discipline. The uniform is the trigger. It's another link for the brain. Your brain learns these associations through repetition, like workout clothes. Work clothes means perform and focus. Comfortable clothes means decompress and relax. Disciplined clothes mean do the thing you said you wanted. The moment you change into your disciplined clothes, before you've done a single thing, the brain begins shifting into that associated state. And that's not an accident. That's an anchor you installed through repetition. And you can install it deliberately. Wear your disciplined clothes only when you're doing the thing you said you wanted. Never in a different context. Over time, the clothes can become the trigger. The state arrives before you even begin. So we've got the question and the clothes, the structure and the curiosity. The more signals you give your brain, the faster the state shifts. And when you combine them consistently, the state stops being something you have to create. It becomes something that arrives on its own because you trained it to. This is the stage where you become your own coach, not by pushing harder, not by suffering through resistance, by creating the conditions that make showing up feel possible, even on the hard days. The hard days aren't the enemy. The hard days are the reason you built the tools. That is stage 3. Help yourself by creating non-negotiable structures, asking better questions, and use clothes as links, all designed to help you stay consistent. Stage 4 is remind yourself. In every martial arts school I've ever been in, there comes a moment where you've been training for a while and the novelty has worn off. Class is no longer new. You've been hit in the face a few times. You've had days where you showed up and days where you didn't want to. And then one day you look around and realize some of the people who started with you are gone. That's blue belt level. Blue belt is the most dangerous rank in martial arts, not because the training gets harder or anything special happens, because the motivation that got you started has now expired and the identity you're building isn't solid enough yet to carry you on its own. You're not a beginner anymore, but the excitement of starting is gone and you're not advanced enough to feel confident. You're in the middle. The middle is where people quit. Now, I would sit my blue belts down in class and say, hey, do you remember your first day in here? You earned a stripe, you broke a board on your first day. Do you remember that? Do you remember how many push-ups you could do? Not very many, right? Do you remember how many people were in class with you? A lot of them have quit since then, but you're still here. Do you remember what you said you wanted? Black belt, right? Looks like you might just make it to black belt. I mean, you're halfway there. Now, I didn't say that to motivate them. I said it to remind them of what they said they wanted. This is not a sign that something's wrong. In martial arts, this is blue belt. But for anything else you do, I call it the long middle. And the long middle has one job: remind you of what you said you wanted. Not the feeling you had when you started. Feelings change. The want underneath the feeling is what matters. Now, when you started, you said you wanted something specific. You named it. You identified what you were willing to give up for it. That was stage one. Now you have more information than you did when you started. You've been experimenting with the method that up until now it's worked. You have more experience, more proof of what you're actually capable of, which means you can ask a better question than you could in the beginning. Did you want the thing you said you wanted, or did you not have enough information yet, to know what you actually wanted? When you're developing self-discipline, this is the part of the learning process that I talked about in the beginning. Remember? You did some research, you gave up something so you could get something better, and you stated something specific you wanted based on that research you did. Then you ran some experiments, you tested, you tried some things, and you increased your capability. And because of the testing and experiments you did, you know more now about what works for you. You can ask better questions and get better answers than you could in the beginning. See, you learned about yourself and your method. It's happening, and I want you to notice what I just did to you. I reminded you of where you started, walked you through the other stages, and refined what it meant so that we could upgrade your capabilities. Like the person who said, I want to try karate, probably didn't know enough yet to say, I want to be a black belt. The want was as specific as their information allowed. Now they know more. Now they can be more specific. Now they already know they can try karate because they did it. Maybe now they would say it differently. They would say, I want to try and earn my black belt. They still want karate, but a more refined want about karate. The person who said, I'll walk around my block every morning for 30 days, was that the destination, or was that the first experiment towards something bigger? If it was the destination and they completed it, then they're done. If it was a step toward better health or more energy or proving they could be consistent, then the question now is, what's the next experiment that moves me closer to the real want? So remind yourself of what you said you wanted. Then ask whether that want needs to be refined now that you know more than you did when you started. If the want still fits, recommit to it. Say it again out loud. Be as specific as you were at stage one. If the want needs upgrading, then upgrade it. Get more specific. Name the next experiment. Identify what you're willing to give up for this new version of the thing you want. Either way, you're not quitting. You're doing what any honest person does in the middle of something real. You're checking the map. You're confirming the destination and deciding to keep going. That is stage 4. Remind yourself. Stage 5 is ask yourself. There's a rank in martial arts that few people reach. It's red belt. At red belt, you're no longer learning new techniques. You basically know everything now. When you were a beginner, I gave you all the tools. When you were in the middle, you tested me to see if I would hold the standards. Now you know that I will. So at red belt, I changed the conversation. A student would walk up to me after class and say, Mr. Wilkerson, did I do good tonight? And I'd look at them and say, I don't know. Did you? Uh, I wasn't deflecting their question. That's actually the whole point of red belt. They no longer need me to evaluate their movements. If they do, I did something wrong in their training. They should be asking themselves for the evaluation before they ask me to evaluate them. So the questions keep shifting inward. The beginner would ask, am I doing this right? And a red belt would ask, am I doing this as well as I know I can do it? The beginner would ask something like, what did I learn tonight? And a red belt, you would ask, did I do what I was trained to do? It's not a new standard. It's the same standards. They're just held at a different level by a different authority. You're not measuring yourself against what someone else told you anymore. You're measuring yourself against what you know you're capable of. That internal voice that asks the questions, it doesn't belong to someone else now. It belongs to you. And the same shift is happening in how you're rewarded. When you started, the reward had to come from the outside. Like in karate, it would have been a stripe on the belt. Or if you're exercising, someone noticed your body changing. Some form of recognition, but from an outside source. That external reward was never the goal. It was the bridge. It held your attention on progress until progress itself was enough. The purpose of the reward was to create dependence on progress until progress became the reward. In my school at Red Belt, I shift that too. I stop acknowledging every session. I start acknowledging the week. I stop handing out stripes for effort. I wait to see if you can feel your own improvement without needing me to confirm it. Because the feeling that the work is working, that's the reward now. And you have to learn to feel it from the inside. Nobody has to manage you anymore. You manage yourself. And when the questions come, was this my best? Did I give what I could? Am I still measuring myself against someone else's standard? You're the one asking them now. That is stage 5. Ask yourself. Stage 6 is watch yourself. At white belt, everyone has the same problems. The group needs the same reminders. The corrections are universal. At brown belt, the problems become completely individual. One person struggled with keeping their hand on their side. One struggled with locking their leg out. One struggled with making a proper fist. The issues were so specific to each person that I could no longer correct the group. I could only correct the individual. And here's what that told me. The universal standards had been absorbed completely. What remained was uniquely theirs. The only person who could see that gap clearly was them, because it lived inside their specific body, their specific patterns, their specific history with those movements. That's what happens when discipline stops being something that you follow and starts being something that you own. By owning the standard, but owning the standard isn't the same as evaluating the performance. That's where stage 6 begins. You watch yourself perform against your own standard with the same clear eyes you would use if you were watching someone else. Don't be harsher, don't be more lenient. You got to be the same. And the comparison is shifted too. You're no longer measuring yourself against the people around you. You're measuring yourself today against yourself yesterday, because the people around you are not you. They don't have your history. They don't have your patterns or experience. They don't have your specific gap between where you are and where your standard says you should be. The only person who can honestly evaluate you is you. You're the only one who knows what's happening inside. Here's what that evaluation sequence looks like. I would look at myself like, here's what I did specifically. Here's specifically what the standard requires. Here's the honest gap between the two. Here's what I'm going to do about it. So you would observe, compare, identify the gap, and then adjust. Not against someone else, against yourself, against your own standard, against what you know you're capable of. And it requires one thing above everything else: ruthless honesty about what reality showed you. Here's where most people break the process. They want so badly to be right, to have chosen correctly, to have worked hard enough, to have deserved the result, that they lie to themselves about what reality actually showed them. They demand the method worked even when the results clearly say it didn't. That's not discipline. That's ego protecting itself at the expense of growth. Reality is not wrong. Reality doesn't care about your effort. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about how hard you tried. Reality only tells you whether the strategy worked or it didn't work. That information is not punishment. It's the most valuable data available. If the test didn't work, it just didn't work. That's clarity. That's not failure. It's clarity. So adjust the method, test it again, stay honest about what the next test shows you. This stage is where discipline stops feeling like something you're building and starts feeling like something you are. That is stage 6. Watch yourself. And stage 7 is trust yourself. Every night after I got home from teaching, I had a ritual. I'd go to each one of my kids' room. I just wanted to talk with them, connect with them, see how they were doing. I had one house rule about bedrooms. Your room is yours. If you have clothes on the floor, I may pick at you about it, but you weren't going to get in trouble. I wasn't going to punish you, and I wasn't going to give you a reward. It's just your space. My oldest son's room was what I would call average. There was clutter on the desk. He had books and papers and notebooks, a computer, trinkets, stuff hidden underneath the bed, stuff thrown in the closet, normal teenager stuff. And he was a junior or senior in school. I don't remember which one. One night I walked in after work. I went into his room and everything was gone. There was zero clutter, nothing under his bed, no computer sitting out, no books, no papers, no trinkets. It looked like he was moving out. I opened the closet. Most of what had been in there the day before, it was gone. What remained was the clothes and shoes that he was actually going to wear daily. He had gotten rid of everything extra. So I smiled and was like, son, where's your stuff? He said, Dad, I've been studying minimalism. I'm only going to keep the things that I need. I asked him, where did all your stuff go? He told me that he threw a lot of it away, gave what he could to Goodwill, and he was going to sell whatever was left. I asked him, did you get in trouble with your mom? Is there something wrong? He said no. He just didn't need all that stuff. Now the day before, all that stuff was there because I went in there. That day, it was gone. Nobody told him to do it. Nobody watched him do it. Nobody rewarded him for doing it. He just decided, then he did it. He trusted himself. That is stage 7. Trust yourself. Now, I wasn't governing him. He'd been governed by the standard inside himself. I hadn't raised a child who followed my standard. I raised someone who could create his own standard and follow that. And that, running your own internal process without anyone else needing to enforce it, that is what a disciplined human being actually is. Here is why that trust is earned. If you go through each stage honestly, not perfectly, but with actual internal honesty, testing each thing genuinely, you have already built the evidence. You know you can manage your state. You know you can set a specific objective. You know what you're willing to sacrifice. You know what the white belt version looks like, and you can start there. You know you can manage your own resistance when it shows up. You know the blue belt stage is coming, and you know to remind yourself is where you started and where all this came from. You know how to watch yourself. You can evaluate the gap, test, adjust. And because you know all of that, nobody has to manage you anymore. Nobody has to tell you what to do. You manage yourself from the inside. When you reach stage 7, you are the authority. Not because you did everything perfectly, because you built an internal feedback loop that no longer needs an outside referee to function. You trust yourself, and that trust is earned through 7 stages of honest testing. That is discipline. 7 stages. They are tell yourself, show yourself, help yourself, remind yourself, ask yourself, watch yourself, and trust yourself. Find the one that best describes where you are right now. Not where you want to be and not where you think you should be, where you actually are. Maybe you're at the tell yourself stage. You haven't named a specific objective yet, so start. The information you have is enough. Get ready to run your first experiment. Maybe you're at show yourself. You've started, but you're calling the results that you're seeing failure. Call them data points and then run the next experiment. Maybe you're at help yourself. You know what to do, but you're fighting your own state every single time. You got to build the tools, ask the questions, change the clothes. Use the structure. Use that stuff every single time. Maybe you're at the remind yourself stage. The novelty has worn off, and the original want feels distant. Go back to what you said you wanted at the beginning. Ask whether the want still fits or whether you know enough now to refine it, recommit, or upgrade. Then keep going. Maybe you're at the ask yourself stage. You're still waiting for someone else to confirm your progress. You need to extend the delay, let the internal loop carry more weight. Ask yourself the honest question and then answer it honestly. Maybe you're at the watch yourself stage. You're evaluating, but ego's still getting in the way. You got to observe, compare, identify the gap, and adjust. And don't adjust against someone else, just against yourself and how you performed yesterday. Now, if you have arrived at trust yourself in any area of your life, you already know what this feels like. Take it into the area where you've been waiting for something external to finally make it stick. That's your starting point, not your identity, not your limit, just where the work begins. And lastly, discipline is not a destination, it's an adventure. Every area of your life is its own discipline. Finances, health, career, marriage, family, any creative work that you're doing. Each one is a separate journey. Each one moves through the same seven stages. Each one will show you something about yourself that you didn't know before you started. You start with, let's say you start with no money and you save $5,000. And a question appears that I've never had to answer before. Do I hold it? Do I hide it? Do I invest it? Do I spend it? That question didn't exist before the discipline produced it. Or let's say you started a fitness discipline and somewhere in the middle you discover you actually enjoy something physical that you thought you would hate, like burpees. That discovery didn't exist before the experiment produced it. That's what discipline actually is, an ongoing, genuine curiosity about what you're capable of and what you haven't discovered about yourself. Every discipline you build is a door. The version of yourself on the other side of that door you can't even imagine yet. There's no way for you to do that. And that's the point. And you don't know what's on the other side until you walk through it. That's the adventure. And you already have everything you need to begin. So tell yourself,